Elisa here with floLIVE. So we are kicking off our summer series, which will focus in on fleet and asset management. So I have Curtis Govan here with me to kick us off. He's the president of the Americas. Curtis, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Elisa. Good to be with you again.
Oh, great. All right. So we're going to do a quick fire interview. Just answer off the top of your head. There are no right or wrong answers. Perhaps there are wrong answers. We'll just have to see what you say. So let's talk a little bit first about the market overall. So lots of pieces go into fleet, asset management, micromobility. What are your thoughts? Where are the interesting use cases and where are they going to take us?
I would say there are tons of interesting use cases that we're seeing, some of which are legacy that are getting better now, and then some are new because you have more accessibility to technology there. What we're seeing from the traditional things is just like, yes, I can track and trace devices there all over the world. I think the thing that has improved just greatly is the ability to go beyond borders now. So the traditional tracking trace, I've got a fleet that's in the U.S. Or in one particular region there. That piece has been really well worked out. But what we're seeing in that case, in terms of improvement, is just the ability to go between different networks. And, if we look at Europe, go from country to country and not lose connectivity. In the U.S., go from one side of the country to the other, go through mountains and valleys along the way, and have a continuous coverage footprint throughout that because you have access to multiple networks. So those use cases, because now you have that continuous connectivity, it's much better. What we're seeing is just tighter requirements around how frequently the device is connected and how frequently it sends data and whether or not it's acceptable to miss a data report. Legacy solutions there for tracking. We have one customer that they track very valuable assets that have very sensitive information on them, and they literally cannot miss a 15-minute reporting window. And so if they do, that becomes problematic. Obviously, they have greater risk of a security breach for their asset there. So with the continuous connectivity, they're able to reach out and keep that device connected and not miss those 15-minute connections. That one is really interesting to see because it's literally something that you couldn't do before because everybody has coverage gaps across a single operator. But when you add multiple operators, you've greatly reduced the number of times when you're not able to connect. That's one that we're seeing a lot of. The world of tracking. What do we call them? The COVID shots. COVID vaccines is what I was looking for. That one is really interesting. And just medicine in general. Medicine that is temperature sensitive there, making sure that it stays at the right temperature and you track it across. Again, that's one that you kind of don't want to know. Don't want to have a case where you don't know where it is and you're not able to monitor different conditions there because of the sensitivity of having it at the right temperature, getting to the right place, making sure the product is not disturbed in any way. That one I think is increased with COVID, and then we're seeing that across other medicines too. Johnson and Johnson and companies like that are putting in mandates to their shippers that I need to know everything about this asset in real time. So that's been really interesting. A couple of the ones that are interesting to watch and monitor there. But the cold chain, which is kind of part of where that fits in as well, that's another area where we're seeing more and more requirements come for that, particularly when you go across seas there. And we've talked a lot in recent months now about the Release 17 NB-IoT over satellite. So the non-terrestrial solution there. So now the ability to not only cover gaps in across land, but also now covering gaps that are across seas as well for connectivity. So making sure cold chain supply management is tighter there. Again, a lot of the same requirements that you have for vaccines and medicines there. Need to make sure that temperature is maintained. Or I think the main thing for those is that if something does happen with the temperature, they can react much faster at the location and get it corrected. So, those are just a few of the applications that we're seeing. Obviously, in our industry, I think there's, literally a new application that's created, every 5 minutes.
True. That's true. You said something interesting I want to circle back around to. So, Release 17 in regard to satellite connectivity and that influence, can you tell us in a nutshell, what does that mean? How is it different? And how does that open up some additional options?
Yeah. I think the first thing, why is coverage, right? There's I mentioned there's limitation to terrestrial networks there, particularly when you get into difficult terrain like mountains and valleys, etc. There, overseas solutions there. Those terrains aren't typically well covered
Mhm.
for lack of population there. So the density of population of people is either really small, so operators haven't traditionally deployed there, or it just may just be propagation. If you're in a valley, if you're in mountainous regions there, it's just so difficult to build out the radio access network framework to support that cost effectively. So that has been the traditional challenge there. And now what happens is the traditional way of supporting that is satellite's been around, obviously, but you would have to build a device that was a dual mode device that had a satellite radio, that had a cellular radio, that had a satellite antenna, and it had a cellular antenna. So the solution there was not as cost effective because you also have not only do you have two bombs that you need to support for the hardware, now you also have two bills to pay. We're bringing that all into one single radio there. So the traditional cellular module chipset will support it there, and there are a number of chipsets that are on the market and coming to the market very soon. And so now you have one chipset, one module, one antenna that's supported, and one service provider like floLIVE to provide that service across the two different technologies, cellular and non-terrestrial.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So I think for my last question here, we know that there are complexities in bringing all of these pieces together. We know that there are solution providers such as floLIVE who are able to help in this scenario. What do you think is the most important thing that a fleet manager should be paying attention to going into, the summer and into the fall to prepare their fleets for, what is going to be the heavier, holiday season and how they can really be successful as they're continuing to grow and scale?
Yeah, I'll say what I said to a customer literally just last week when they asked us this question and why we're different and what they should be looking for. And I'll tell you, not just to sell our company, all of the people on our team, we really work in a consultative fashion where like we're trying to educate customers as much as we can. We think we have the best solution in the world. We think we're solving problems unlike anyone else in the world from a connectivity perspective. So we just simply say, like, these are the things that we think are really important to solve the problems that you may have as a fleet manager. One, you know, does the provider actually have coverage across multiple networks, multiple geographies, with a single SIM SKU that can autonomously move between that coverage, right? That's the standard. That's the standard that we've set today. And honestly, if you look at the challenges that I mentioned earlier, that's what solves that problem is being able to have multiple networks on a single SIM SKU at a single price for the customer to be able to autonomously move back and forth between the networks so that you're connected as much as possible, right? There's going to be gaps in coverage for sure, but it's about getting the absolute best solution there. So do you have a SIM? Do you have a coverage footprint that allows for that autonomy of switching between the different networks available? Then the other thing I would say is that your solution might need to be customized. Very frequently, that's the case for our customers, that we need to do some customization to optimize their solution. What comes into play there is whether or not the provider has their own core network infrastructure that they own, right? That they build, that they manufacture, that their engineers are designing and developing and deploying. Do you have that? Because when you have that, now you can say to a customer that has a dash cam that needs a particular setting on the PGW, you can say, I can make that adjustment for you. You have a particular latency requirement, a jitter requirement for your video, throughput requirements. I can have you select the best network, test the performance at that location there and connect to it. And then in the back end, from the PGW perspective, I can customize the PGW settings for your particular application, not impact the rest of my customers because they all have their own custom settings that they may need, but I can customize it for you to meet the requirements that you need, right? So do you have that? Do you have control over that infrastructure so that I can optimize the solution for my customer base? Like that to me is a really critical thing to answer there. And then, of course, people ultimately get to, do you also have that in a cost-effective manner? And that also is something that we provide that, others may be cost-effective as well. But if you don't have the other two things, that being the lowest cost, doesn't really help you if the performance is not as good.
That's a good point. That's true. So awesome. Well, thank you, Curtis. I appreciate your time. So this is the beginning of our 5-part series that we're going to be delivering to you all this summer. So we're going to cover a lot of really interesting topics from EUICC, what regulations you need to worry about, what ones you don't, and additional elements with video, dash cams, and telematics. So lots of interesting things to come. If any of you have any questions throughout the time, feel free to reach out to me on social media, and we're happy to answer any of those questions. Thanks again, Curtis, for your time today. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.